Good evening. A very warm welcome to everyone who has joined the discussion today. First of all, thanks to the panelists who responded to our request to participate in the discussion on the documentary for this evening, Celluloid Man. Professor Satish Poduval, Shivendra Singh Dungarpur, director of this wonderful documentary, who also readily agreed to make the film available for this discussion to Talking Films Online. And Irene Dhar Malik, the editor of this film. Talking Films Online, or TFO in short, is an informal coming together of academics, teachers, students, researchers, filmmakers, and cinephiles interested in cinema, more importantly, interested in talking and writing about cinema. The online group came together quite spontaneously during the pandemic and lockdown in June 2020. Dr. Geeta Vishwanath and I have been coordinating the activities of TFO since its inception. So far, we have organized over 100 online events, which include weekly discussions. That is, we always meet on Saturday night at 9 p.m. Weekly discussions on a pre-decided film, besides a few month-long film festivals and discussions, such as we've had a short film festival that was curated by Dr. Nipa Majumdar, a French film festival curated by Abhijit Ranadev, an Iranian film festival that was curated by Dr. Praveena Cooper, a retrospective of the American filmmaker Kelly Reichardt, which was curated by Louis Matthew. We had a Kannada film festival and also an East European film festival curated by Dr. Irina Livziano. During June last year, to mark the first anniversary of TFO, we had organized a smartphone short film competition for students between 18 to 25 years of age, which we repeated this year so as to make it an annual anniversary event. We had organized a lecture series also this year in collaboration with different organizations and institutions on different aspects of cinema. Our aim is to get a conversation going around cinema and to get as many people involved in the process as possible. With all our events being online, anyone and everyone interested in cinema is welcome to our forum. We have a blog called talkingfilmsonline.wordpress.com where we encourage all kinds of writings on cinema. We also have a YouTube channel called Talking Films Online where you can watch some of our discussions. Basically, we connect through Facebook. It's a private group on Facebook and also via WhatsApp. Thanks again to everyone who has joined this discussion today. And we're really looking forward to having an interesting evening talking about Celluloid Man. Now I invite Professor Satish Poduval, my colleague, to initiate a discussion. Before I do that, let me quickly introduce Professor Satish Poduval. Professor Satish Poduval teaches literary and cultural studies at the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. He has edited Refiguring Culture, History, Theory, and the Aesthetic in Contemporary India, and is part of the editorial team of Maidanam.com and IndianCine.ma. Over to you, Satish. I will introduce the other panelists by and by as we go along. Over to you now, Satish.
Okay, thank you very much, Nikhila. And I joined this chat, conversation, or after dinner adda to talk about this film that many of us have really enjoyed watching and learned a great deal from. It is wonderful to have this opportunity to interact with the director of the film and also with the editor of the film this evening. I have been tasked with initiating a discussion over 20 or 25 minutes on this film. I realize very well that all of us would like to listen to Shivendra and Irene speak about their film. So I will not take up too much time. What I would do is begin by sharing some of the thoughts I had when I watched this film again recently, yesterday, after say 5 years or so when I had first seen it. After that, I will pose a few questions that struck me as important, that are related to what this film is about and what it does for the cause of film preservation, conservation, restoration, the kind of work that Shivendra in particular has been involved with in the recent years. And then we can open it out for everybody to join in the chat. So let's dive right in. We will all agree that Celluloid Man is a highly watchable and engaging account of P.K. Nair's life and work at the NFAI. It also doubles as an account of the importance and appeal of cinema in India. Although it's quite a long film with a runtime of 2 hours, 34 minutes, it had me quite engrossed even in my second viewing, and it did not feel as if it was longer than it needed to be. This could be because the film combines a fascinating historical account of the National Film Archives of India with the engrossing personal story of P.K. Nair. Both these subjects of the film are presented to us through insightful reminiscences and reflections of people closely associated with Indian cinema, intercut with a compelling ride through the many locations and terrains in which Indian cinema has been made and watched and lost. These latter sequences were especially mesmerizing to watch again, particularly because they are overlaid with a brilliant soundtrack, sometimes from the locations we are taken to the filmmaker, sometimes from the soundscape of great films, which allows the director to make a point effectively without verbal commentary. Whenever the director does speak in the film, it is not to hold forth didactically, but in a personal tone of reflection and reminiscence. This makes this documentary film, and I say it in praise, look like a big budget, big screen, big bang cinema at its best. I suppose these virtues, it could be said, to share with several other interesting documentaries that have been made in India over the past couple of decades. But its singular claim to our renewed attention today is not because it has won more jury awards and popular accolades from across the world, but because Celluloid Man and its director have been successful in starting off more serious efforts in the conservation and restoration of Indian cinema through the Film Heritage Foundation, about which I hope there will be some discussion tonight. All right, with that out of the way, let me turn now to a few of the broader questions that the film raised for me. The circumstances of P.K. Nair's return to the NFAI to shoot for this film are not very clear, although it is made amply clear that there was some long and unpleasant negotiation involved. The director tells us that it took him 1 year and 11 visits to get permission to shoot the film with Nair Saab in the archives. A lot had to be said, left unsaid perhaps for reasons of tact or to retain the narrative focus of the film. But I hope, Shivendra, that you can tell us something about the turf that you were staking claim to as a filmmaker and as an alumnus of this public institution, and which the NFAI honchos seemed reluctant to cede to you and even to P.K. Nair, who created the place and had run it until a few years ago. I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about the making of the film. I mean, we know what the idea was and what happens on screen, but that negotiation, I think, is an interesting part of what this film actually has meant to us.
Yeah. No, Satish, thank you very much.
I will say something more. Do you want to come in now and take that?
Yeah, sure. I'll wait for your thing.
Okay. Let me just finish it so that we don't get pulled into other things. A more complicated question pertains to how we are to think, not just about the NFAI in particular, but about the nature of the institution called the archive in general. This question is not simply one of whether there ought to be a well-maintained archive for various fields of social and cultural history, including, of course, cinema. Let us assume that we might hopefully soon get to a point where the answer to the question of whether cinema deserves a good archive is answered with an affirmative yes and with funding and support in place. Let's assume that this will happen. That would then bring us to the more difficult question about what an archive ought to be and to do. And the answer to this is not so self-evident anymore within established fields like, for example, political history, or emerging fields like cultural studies and film studies. An archive could be conceived of either as a repository of the dominant or currently prevailing values in a given society, or it could function like a more open field in which contests and battles over public memory may be discerned. In Celluloid Man, for instance, there is this remarkable sequence in which Nita's despairing and haunting entreaty, I wish to live, or Dada Ami Bachte Chai, from the end of Ghatak's Megidakathara is brilliantly edited to make the neglected film reels in the NFAI shed cry out desperately that they too, like Nita, wish to live. But this sequence, in my mind, is counterposed with the equally haunting sequence of the man extracting silver from celluloid reels. The poignancy and heartbreak for all who care for cinema are powerfully evoked using the very language of cinema. But the problem is that this is a one-sided view. Not wrong, but one-sided nevertheless. The director overlays this visual sequence of the man stripping the celluloid of silver in the dingy shed with a narrative of his own childhood reminiscence in faraway Rajasthan, of his grandmother booking an entire movie hall for the family to watch films, and of the grandfather bringing films in 16mm reels from Calcutta. And the viewer is made to witness in horror how the man on screen goes about heartlessly massacring the celluloid reels. The director's voiceover tells us at this point, here I am surrounded by film cans and films, the images I grew up with being washed away and turned into silver for colored bangles. But I was wondering about the personal and historical experience of that nameless man on the screen, and it felt like a classic instance of demanding a parallax view. We could either see this working man as hanging out those blank celluloid reels like entrails in a butcher's shed, but shifting focus, we could equally well view the material discard, the plastic white material discards covering him and his social existence with a shroud, as it were. So it is not simply or only the case that cinema magic and cinema history have been sucked out along with the silver in those reels, and that our heritage has been vandalized or stolen from us, and we feel bereaved. It is equally the case that through a different yet connected history that this film does not look at, this Indian workers' aspirations and entitlements as a citizen too have been extracted and laid to waste through a very similar process, through very similar processes of political economy and historical neglect. While the film recognizes, laments, and protests correctly against the first type of neglect, it does not, it seems to me, pause to recognize, mourn, or direct aesthetic and political energy towards the second type of neglect. I fully agree with the perspective that exhorts that the films abandoned at the NFAI or such low-end markets as the one we see there wish to live like Nita. But we need to braid in or edit in the other narrative of poor, exploited, and abandoned Indians who too wish to live and deserve to be recognized by our gaze, rather than seemingly be demonized on screen or rendered invisible in nostalgic histories written by and for people like us. In Celluloid Man, there is perhaps an unwitting return of the repressed moment at the end as the credits roll, and we hear Chudi Mein Laya Anmol Re, I bring you these priceless bangles, sung by a worker peddler in the 1936 film Achut Kanya. I guess citing this song was designed to signal and celebrate a happy ending of a documentary film that had successfully brought for us a priceless set of bangles or jewels from our cinematic history. But the song also prompted in me the memory of Shivendra saying earlier in the film about how the worker in the Bombay shed was stripping away the silver-tinged memories of Shivendra's childhood for making, yes, bangles, churian. I also remember the man selling the bangles in the original scene of Achut Kanya, 1936, frown momentarily when a woman seems to, it seemed, she was just taking away his priceless bangles without paying for them. How are we as viewers positioned in relation to these bangles that are laid out before us? So the first question is about how do we archive not just celluloid films, reels, and these very precious objects of our heritage, but also the memories with which cinema has been engaged with in Indian society across the ages. So that is broadly the first question that I had in mind. A second aspect that struck me as worth discussing further relates to the somewhat cryptic discussion on film piracy. Celluloid Man poses the question, is it the archivist's job to stick to the limits of legal and institutional propriety, or to try and ensure that cinema survives through copying and remains accessible for public screenings? I feel that the second role is crucial in a country like India, and I loved it when, for instance, Brunal Sen proudly recounts telling Mary Seton, it is my luck, and he actually means my great luck and honor. He says this very proudly, that Langlois had made a pirate copy of my film. He not only does he not object to it, he is in fact very happy that another cinephile had recognized and valued and given him a place. And also when P.K. Nair himself responds to Shivendra's sharp question about whether he stole or films when working at the NFII, and Nair declares, a true archivist should have the immunity to overcome all these legal problems. Since these questions of intellectual property and social propriety remain urgently with us even today, I hope there will be some discussion on how to rethink the dominant frame within which the question of piracy is often raised elsewhere, everywhere. In this film, it's interesting. It makes no apology for it. It skirts the question that has animated a lot of discussion in recent decades about what is it that piracy does in India. Is piracy something that more than the archives have actually kept some certain films in circulation, even if it's in low quality prints? How do we think it? Not simply a question of how do we restore, which we have to do. These are not separate or conflicting agendas. But my feeling is that we need both things. The important task of conserving and restoring cinema, but I also feel it's important to have cinema in use, circulating in society. And for that to happen, some amount of piracy, I think, has been very useful so far. How this will change going forward, I don't know yet, but it's a question worth thinking about seriously. Finally, in closing, I would also request Shivendra to tell us a bit more about the work he is currently doing with the Film Heritage Foundation and the newly launched National Film Heritage Mission, in collaboration with the Government of India, as well as many other film institutions from across the world. I understand that your effort is to conserve and restore filmic and non-filmic source material like posters and songbooks and a whole lot of other materials, diaries, manuscripts, scripts related to cinema. I feel that this work is very important and very exciting. I would just like to see a bit more done in terms of digital annotation of cinema, involving historians, sociologists, feminists, and of course, film scholars. The organization IndianCine.ma has done some interesting work of this sort, though it proceeds in fits and starts due to the voluntary and underfunded mode of activity so far. But I remain hopeful that in future, access to digitally annotated films online will not just conserve the objects of cinema, but also restore to our historical imagination the different things that films have meant for different people at different times. That could perhaps be another way of thinking about film restoration going forward. Not just restoring the original quality of the film, but also restoring it to society, restoring it to the socially negotiated context of the battle meaning. This, I think, can be done when films are digitally annotated by a number of people working from different perspectives. So we could talk a little bit more about that. So to sum up, I have raised 4 points to start the discussion with Shivendra and Irene. First, the problems faced in shooting the film with P.K. Nair at NFAI. Second, the question of thinking of the archive not only as a repository of dominant or existing heritage, but as a conflicted field in which a fractured public memory battles for an afterlife. Third, the question of how to think of piracy not simply as a criminal act, but as a convivial act described by some of its proponents in terms of sharing and caring. And lastly, the question of whether and how digital annotation could be a different yet important way of restoring not only cinema, but also our conflicted cinematic history and frames of interpretation. So maybe I could begin by requesting Shivendra and Irene to respond to some of these questions first, and then we could have more questions and comments from the others present.
Yeah, thank you very much, Satish. I think it's opened up a number of issues. Before I ask Shivendra and Irene to respond, I have to introduce the two panelists who have kindly joined us. Shivendra Singh Dungarpur is an award-winning filmmaker and film producer with his own production house called Dungarpur Films. He is an alumnus of the Doon School in Dehradun at St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and the FTII, where he enrolled to study film direction and script writing. Besides Celluloid Man, he has made a documentary called The Immortals in 2015, a film that evokes memories of filmmakers and artists, memories that live on in spaces, objects, and reminiscences of people. Another film called Checkmate, in search of Irene 2018, on the well-known Czechoslovakian director Irene. He has also produced short films and TV series. His films have won many awards at the national and international levels. He is passionately committed to film preservation and restoration and is associated with many organizations, as Professor Satish mentioned, all over the world which work towards this end. He's also established the Film Heritage Foundation, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to supporting the conservation, preservation, and restoration of the moving image, and to develop interdisciplinary educational programs that will use film as an educational tool and create awareness about the language of cinema. He is also published very widely, writing for publications like The Telegraph, The Hindu, and so on. Irene Dhar Malik, the other panelist, is a Mumbai-based editor of documentaries, feature films, and TV series. An alumnus of FTII Pune, Irene has edited documentaries like the film we are discussing now, Celluloid Man, and Checkmate, in search of Irene Menzel. And also Karan Bali's film, An American in Madras, which we discussed a few weeks ago on TFO, and Karan Bali too was here with us. Miriam Chandy Menachery's From the Shadows. Her feature films include Owner's I Am, Bikash Mishra's Chauranga, and Ashwini Malik's Clever and Lonely. Irene edited the first Indian English TV series, A Mouthful of Sky, the critically acclaimed Yashraj series, Powder, and the recent docu-series Breakpoint. She's currently working on a couple of feature films and one docu-series. She's also guest faculty at FTII and Whistling Woods. She writes film scripts, reviews, and short fiction. She's the co-author of I Am Onir and I'm Gay. Irene has won the film award. Maybe she'll talk a little about this aspect, which she later returned for editing Celluloid Man. She has also won the IDPA award for editing An American in Madras. Thank you both to the panelists for joining us. Satish has raised a number of questions, and Shivendra wanted to come in to respond to some of them, I think. So maybe you can, we can go to you, Shivendra. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, I mean, there were 4 questions which Satish raised, and I can remember the very first one. There are other 3 questions about the foundation and the piracy and the other things. But let me broadly talk about first of all why Celluloid Man was made, and how did it sort of come about? Because the intention was not to make a film, first of all. Celluloid Man came that I was in my peak of my advertising career, and I happened to be on a flight, and I was in that period thinking about traveling and meeting a whole lot of filmmakers whom I admired when I was when I was a student at the FTI, which included Andre Vaida or Jerry Menzel or Miklos Jancho, or a lot of East European cinema, which I had enjoyed watching, or I was very deeply inspired by. And on one such trip, I got to know that there is a festival in Bologna which screens restored films. And I think that was the beginning of my realization that what's really happening to Indian heritage. And I came back to India and I drove to Pune to meet P.K. Nair, who had already retired from the NFAI. And he was staying in a house called Chatur, which was just opposite the NFAI. And I went to meet him, and it's interesting that we knew each other, but we didn't know each other so well when I met him, when I came back. And I was so moved by what Scorsese was talking about and what I saw at Bologna, that I started talking about what's happening to the old films, what's happening to the Indian heritage. And I was really wanting to know more about it, because here in Bologna, I was seeing beautiful prints and such beautiful restorations. And I came back with just wondering that the films which we were seeing at FTII or at NFAI, and when you are students at FTII, or when you embark on a career as a filmmaker, you really don't care about preservation. You're so engrossed in your next film, your career. You really don't think. And that's why now when I look at it and I think about all my filmmaker friends who are international filmmaker friends, whether it's Scorsese or Alexander Payne or Christopher Nolan or Wes Anderson, whom I've had very close relationships with, I just think that they're remarkable, because day and night think about films which they're creating, but they're also thinking about heritage, which is not in India, which is just not prevalent in India. And their knowledge on history of cinema, because you could sit with Wes Anderson and talk about Metropolis the way he talks about Metropolis. I've never seen anybody talk about Metropolis the way he does, or Quentin Tarantino talks about films. So I think it's something part of their culture, and I sort of understood that when I went to Bologna. So when I went to P.K. Nair, he was very reluctant. He was living in this bungalow, and I said, I want to go to the archive. And when I went to the archive, and when I went down to the vaults, and there were four of us who went together, what I noticed was that there were these young kids from Pune city, which I couldn't capture on film, because when I actually went in, when I saw them, that they had paid 50 rupees to the person in charge to study at the vaults. So these kids could be sitting on Battleship Potemkin or La Dolce Vita or any of those film cans in the vaults, because there was free electricity, it was air conditioned, and they would just come down and they would just, because in Pune that time it was difficult. There were many chawls and many places where they didn't have electricity. And the vaults were used as that. And there wasn't any law in terms of the archive. There wasn't any. It was government controlled, and I think P.K. Nair was very disturbed. And then we went to the second phase, and he was so disturbed. I could see him. And at that moment, I realized that something needs to be done. And what I thought was, my wife's friends were part of NDTV or these news channels. And I thought that I would shoot some bit of it and show it to them, and probably create, through news, we could create an awareness about this archive, because I never thought I'll take this mantle. I mean, I was too busy with my career and things, but I could see that not a single film of India was getting restored or preserved, or people were really caring about any of those, things which we now care about. And we shot with P.K. Nair. I got one of my batchmates to shoot on 16mm. And I think Irene came much later. I mean, when we shot, I think the first round or the second round, I think Irene joined Irene will be able to tell better when she really joined, because she worked for really 5 years on this film. If I'm right, Irene, am I right? 5 years, Irene?
No, 5 years was Checkmate.
Yeah, okay. So
This one was about a year.
yeah, okay, fine. So, but the first schedule when I shot,
I came on board right after the first schedule.
after the first schedule, yeah.
Yeah.
So we shot the first schedule, and we thought we'll give it to the news and thing and all that. And it's after the first schedule I shot, I got so interested in the story of P.K. Nair. I wanted to go back and shoot again. And P.K. Nair said that you can shoot again if it's not a film about me, if it's a film about film preservation. And I kept lying to him right through the whole film that it's not about you, it's about film preservation. But the second schedule was when I was literally thrown out of the National Film Archive, because P.K. Nair and I were shooting, and I remember that they wanted to call the cops, the director, and I had to call Sham Benegal and Saeed Mirza and say that, you know, and they didn't want P.K. Nair because they found P.K. Nair as a nuisance, because P.K. Nair was staying outside the institute and he was like a guardian to the archive. And he was always complaining about things which were happening at the National Film Archive. And at that point, it was under bureaucratic control. And I think that began the journey of Celluloid Man. Was, I think, the very second schedule is when we started formulating to shoot again. But again, it was a very spontaneous sort of shoot. It was something which had to be put on the editing table, which Irene worked very hard on doing that. But I think right through, we kept thinking about the cause more than anything else, the feeling, the cause, the issues. And rarely do you come across a subject which you tend to make, which becomes your life mission. Because as an advertising filmmaker, we made several films on cancer. We made several films on, I've made over 1,000 ad films and many social films on social welfare. But not every film you make, you get attached to it, or you feel for it, or you tend to do something for it. And I think Celluloid Man was once a journey that it ceased to be a film for me. It became my life mission. That I learned so much about the heritage, which was a beautiful country had, and the kind of films we made, whether they were nitrate, whether they were acetate, what are the films we have lost. And we realized we've lost so much of our heritage. And most importantly, I realized the contribution of P.K. Nair, the contribution of a government officer who fell in love with films, and how in those times, and it was Nehruvian times also, so he had that benefit of that, but still to collect the way he collected films and to preserve them and to showcase it to the young students. And we were part of that much later stage of benefiting out of that incredible heritage of films which NFAI had, of world cinema, of Indian cinema, and many other such parts of the world. And I think that became an obsession, and Celluloid Man became beginning of my journey. And I still think of it as the experience and the learning I had. I never think of it as a film. Even today, as much as, I'm proud of doing it, but I'm proud because I've started Film Heritage Foundation. I'm proud because the field I'm on, it's not a film for me. It's really a mission. Yeah, it's really, and I miss P.K. Nair. I mean, it's 10 years, 2012 and we are 2022. And I realized 10 years just a few days ago when my people in my team said, "Oh, you've done 10 years." And I said, "My God, it's 10 years." Didn't realize that Irene and I were sitting every day and working on that edit and working on that film. And when we made the first DC, I mean, we first showed it. We shot on film, so it was on film, and we showed Peek and I the first edit at Art Labs, and he was mesmerized. And the only thing he said is, I asked him, is the length okay? And he said, yeah, it's okay. And that meant a lot, because he didn't say it was good, bad, or anything. He just said the length is okay. And that meant he liked it, because he was a man of very few words. And we were really touched. And I think it was an incredible journey of discovering the heritage of India, and to spend time with Peek and I, and just, I think just that. I mean, I've learned so much from it, and I just continue to learn, about that heritage. I don't think I would have achieved that had I not gone. So that was my satyagraha, that was my journey. That was my,
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Can I now request Irene to come in? If you want to come in now, that will be wonderful.
I think Shivi said all that needs to be said. As an answer to the first question. In any case, that was his journey, like going and starting the film. So let Shivi go on to the next.
Okay, in which case we'll open the discussion out. Anyone who has anything to say at this point, and maybe Irene can come in at any point you want to respond to the questions. Sure. Anyone who wants to begin at this point, respond to the film, share your response to the film. Just unmute yourself so I know. Mithila has unmuted herself. Do you want to respond, Mithila? Okay, that seemed like an accident. Anyone else? Geeta, yes, please go ahead, Geeta.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Poduval, very much for that very wonderful introduction to the film. And you have raised a lot of the questions that I had also actually jotted down. Firstly, I found the film an extremely honest film because when you make a film on a particular person whom you admire, it tends to get hagiographic, but that did not happen with this documentary. You have interviewed his daughter, and she speaks about how as a father, he was missing in their formative years. And you also raised this question about, piracy, which Professor Poduval has already spoken about. And you directly ask P.K. Nair whether, about stealing. And he says, well, to use the word thief for an archivist is not really an ideal word. So that part of the film, where you show, although you said that you had to, bluff to him that it was not about him, the film is obviously a great deal about the man and his single-minded devotion to the process of archiving. And the value he put to archiving in terms of how an archive is actually a history in the making. So that is something that comes out in the film very well. And what interested me was we generally think of archiving as a process of selection, and selection in turn involves a series of inclusions and exclusions. But for Nair, it was not really selection in this manner. He said he would just collect every film that came his way because he saw historical value in every film, and therefore it needed to be preserved and, if needed, restored. Basically, he always thought in terms of the films as something that needs to be passed on as a legacy to the next generation. So that for me was something very interesting. And also the different ways of looking at cinema, cinema as wonder, and cinema as a way of understanding life. And he also says you should love films like you love your own kids. So, that kind of passion was something that was very touching. But I just had one question for Shivendra, and that is, you raised this question about the neglect of NFAI after the retirement of P.K. Nair. So was there any way you could have interviewed people to ask about what exactly, happened, and why that, why it got completely neglected, and why there was no good successor to P.K. Nair? So that was just my only question. But otherwise, it was an absolutely illuminating film for me. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Geeta. Thank you for all those wonderful words you've said. Well, yes, we did interview one of the directors who was there just after P.K. Nair. And we did interview him, and he is in the film. And I think it was just the fact that we were lucky that when P.K. Nair, he started his career as a librarian of the FTI. And that initial Nehruvian period, as I call it, where there were a lot of artists and a lot of people which came into being. P.K. Nair at that initial stages presented a blueprint and got selected, and he was moved to be what is called assistant curator of NFAI. He wasn't, for many years, he was just an assistant, People thought he was a director, but he was not. He became a director very late in his life. He remained as an assistant curator. In fact, they used to use the premise of the FTI, and the screenings would happen at FTI. So all Nasir and that batch of students remember watching those censor cuts, which you've seen, that all used to happen at FTI, because NFI never had their own premise or the theatre. The NFI premise which you see today was a girls' hostel. If you've seen Shabana Azmi's Facebook post or anything, she posted the pictures of that wonderful bungalow, which is now NFI, which used to be the girls' hostel, actually. So they never had their own premise. So for P.K. Nair, for many years, because he was living in that kind of atmosphere, he took a lot of passion. And, one can't forget that his love for cinema began not only with that, but also that he worked in a lab and in Bombay. So he had immense knowledge about archiving and preservation. And then his interactions with Ritwik Ghatak. Ghatak was, Ghatak, as Kumar Shani told me, that Ghatak's knowledge of archiving was so incredible that he used to sit under the wisdom tree and he used to give notes to P.K. Nair and how you should archive, and of course when Ghatak was also teaching at FTI and was asked to leave FTI because of his drinking problem or something, he went on to live with P.K. Nair. And that led to understanding that something which is very interesting, that the early reels of Ajantrik, Ghatak had thrown out and it doesn't exist. But those interactions I got to know. So So in many ways, P.K. Nair was very instrumental in that period with me to tell me many secrets of many of the negatives or the prints or things which are lying, which has helped me today. And Geeta, one other interesting question at that point, in 2012, when I turned around and asked him about the did you steal films, is because the myth of us at the Institute was that he did that. I had no proof to prove that. And he evaded that question very well because he knew he had done all that. And that was a Henry Langlois practice. Langlois was their real inspirational. And having founded Cinematheque and worked with Lotte Eisner to create the Cinematheque, because, you know, when Hitler invaded Germany, they had to hide many films, and Lotte Eisner was very responsible for saving a lot of films with Henry Langlois. And I think now when I look at myself, when I'm having a foundation and an archive, I think I might have done some illegal things too, you know, in order to preserve that film, in any way, to by hook or crook, to get that film. And then when I was making Checkmate, and when I was in Prague and I was shooting in FAMU, they spoke about these two people from the archive who used to show films at FAMU. And they used to, at the airport, when the prints would arrive, they would wait within that gap of the time the plane took off. They would take those negatives or prints, make a copy quickly, bring it back to the airport, and the plane would take off, and they would have made a print for the Czech filmmakers, which was really responsible for the Czech New Wave to emerge. And I think all archivists have done that. And now when I'm in that pair of shoes, I realize how important that was in terms of preservation, in terms of daringness. Of course, the times were different because celluloid was so important. Today we are on a digital age, a lot on digital age, when celluloid is still important. But I think Celluloid Man gave me that premise and that feeling that what really happened at that point, which I found quite outrageous. And I said, oh my God, he did this. Or the stories we heard in the Institute seem mild now and seem really for a great cause. Because Langlois did that all the time. And the French New Wave would not have been able to see those films had it not been for the way Langlois brought those films across to them. And I think same for the Indian New Wave. P.K. Nair did that for the students at FTI. Had he not done what he did, we would have not had those wonderful films at NFAI had P.K. Nair not done ways of keeping them. So yeah, I mean, it's both very important. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Geeta, and thanks, Shivendra, for responding. I mean, I just want to share my own response while others collect their thoughts, response to this film. There were two points that I would like to bring forth at this point. One is, I mean, while such a large part of the film is obviously about P.K. Nair and his efforts at archiving, something else which seems to have gone hand in hand with the process. It's not just about collecting, it's also about making available these films. And every filmmaker whom you have interviewed talks about how magical it was that they were, able to access films that they would never otherwise have seen. So archiving, going hand in hand with the kind of training that these filmmakers were receiving in FTII, or even the kind of work that taking these films and showing them in maybe Ninasam, places like that. And so having a forum for discussions around cinema, discussions around what is in the archive. Otherwise, it could just have been an inert or a dead project, if you just have them in your vaults, but it wasn't that. So there was something generative out of this. And also the kind of research that has happened on Indian film history as a result of this process of archiving. Though your film does not say much about that, I think, as a film studies person, I know what it means, to be able to have these wonderful films on YouTube, Dada Saheb Phalke's films, and to be able to talk about it in my course on silent cinema or something like that. So what it has meant for film scholarship is also something that is there in some incipient form, I think, in your film. So it's again something that I appreciated very much about.
Yeah, I think what you said is such an incredible point, and I think it's really important because what we struggle being a foundation, because this is the sad part of India. When you run a non-for-profit organization, you lack funds. And it's the only country which doesn't have any grants. No grants for anything we have. And specifically now, because we sort of preserve many kinds of films. And the government doesn't have any facilities for us to provide grants. We survive on donations and we survive just to preserve those films. But what was incredible about PK Nair, I mean, that's that he not only built the National Film Archive, but he saw to it that dissemination, the fact that the films reach every nook and corner. I mean, the fact that Vinod Chopra talks about that he wanted to borrow a print of 16 mm of Breathless. And until today, Vinod talks about dedicating his films to PK Nair. Or Janu Barua talks about it. Or whether it was what happened in Ninasam that you talk about. In fact, all those prints are with me now, preserved. It's sort of come back to me. But Professor Satish Bahadur and PK Nair would carry those prints and those immense film appreciation course, which the translation would happen where the peons would talk and they would be wondering who the murderer in Rashomon was, and at the simultaneously you are watching a Bergman film and somebody is translating it while it's playing alive. Or even when I was shooting with the projectionist, he knew so much about Antonioni and Bergman. I mean, I've never even known a projectionist from a village knowing so much about that. And so I think all that just showed that if you wanted to research anything, whether it's Nasreen Munir Kabir going there and saying, I want this song, or Raju Irani saying, I want this song number so-and-so for a holy dance, or Nasreen saying it, I want it for BBC or whatever it is, or Mahesh Bhatt saying that I want it for this book I'm doing. I think the accessibility, the openness of PK Nair, the only drawback which I saw in that is that he was whole soul of it. And that is the biggest drawback which I see. As much as I love him as my guru and as much as I've learned, and that is what we want to do in our foundation, is to create that base that is not just dependent on me, is not just dependent on one person, but it's dependent on an institution which takes that forward. That there are enough people who can disseminate that thing, that you can walk into the institution and ask for, that I want to study this, I want to study that, I want to do that. When you walk into an Academy Museum, or you walk into MoMA, or you walk into BFI, or you walk into, yes, they have the money, they have the power, but the NFAI is no short of money. They have huge amount of money. They're one of the richest archives in the world. Believe me, I'm a member of FIAF. They would be the richest archive in the world today. They're number one in terms of money. Not the Film Heritage Foundation, because we survive on donations, right? We survive on, it's the willpower. You don't have, unless you do not have bureaucrats, unless you do not have people. And PK Nair, we were lucky that there was a bureaucrat he was not a bureaucrat. He joined as a librarian who got interested in films, became the director of NFAI, and went on. Then we had series of bureaucrats coming in, and over the years when really fell off. Then we had a film appreciation professor who became the director of NFAI for a while. And then again, it went back onto bureaucrats, and it remains in the hands of bureaucrats. So how much would a bureaucrat really understand what a film archive requires? Because his perception is of a different kind. I mean, if he understood, we certainly will not have Karma as the main film for patriotism playing on the 75th year at the National Film Archive. I mean, I'm sure you would agree that Karma is not the ideal film to play at the National Film Archive. And few of the people singing toast to it, that the songs of Karma has been the most patriotic songs of Indian nationalism. So that's what really happened. And it was in Bombay Times. It wasn't anywhere else. And so I think times have changed and people have changed. So what we need is that when you have the money, is the willpower that P.K. Nair had, but to transform it into making it available. Whether, you know, I really want to do that with the Film Heritage Foundation. We struggle because of the funds and things, but the will of everyone giving us the material, the will of everyone wanting me to do everything, and I don't want to fall into the trap of that. I want to make sure that we are able to create an institution which is open for public, because finally, unless it's available to public, unless people are able to do research, able to disseminate, able to use that material, the archive has no value. It has no meaning.
Yeah.
You know, we're not a hoarding house. We're not preserving it for anything. And how long are we going to live to preserve any of these things? It needs to be shared. It needs to be, and you have different ways of sharing it. It may not be available on YouTube and other ways of doing it. Sure, we need to respect copyright issues and we need to respect filmmakers and people, but there has to be a better channelization of availability and usage and research. And you know, we've been doing so many oral history with people. In fact, we are in the process of shooting with Shan Benegal. We've just done Kumar Shani. We're doing Saeed Mirza. We're doing Birbal. We're doing sound recordings Narendra Singh. The whole idea of these oral histories are that they're available for public. They're extensive oral histories. We've tied up with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences so that we are able to get some bit of funds from them to be able to understand all these great personalities of film, whether they're small, big. You know, I just discovered a wonderful background dancer of the 50s and the 60s. Her name was Edwina. And the moment I got to know she was in Bombay, and she's done over 200 films as a background dancer, to all those great films, which she was there in that wonderful film of Shami Kapoor, Zulfo Wali, that famous song of Goldie Anand, that famous film. And she's the one on that, I think it's the V or one of those things, she's lying on that thing. And I immediately went, she was in New Bombay, and I interviewed her and made sure that she's documented. And I got to know so much about that period of background dancers and how they were used, and they were part of the Anglo-Indian community. They were really not feeling they were Indian, and that community was different. You know, they were very so foreign in many ways. They lived in Baikula, and it was so wonderful to get to know that and to discover. So I think that's what is very important. What P.K. Nair taught us is that Sanjeev Kumar could walk into the National Film Archive and say, "I'm doing a film with Satyajit Ray. I don't know much about his films. Can you show me his films?" You know, and you have the archive which can show you. I'm telling you, try that out today. You will not succeed. I mean, you may succeed. It will take time.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Nandini is making a point in the chat box. Nandini, do you want to come in and speak?
Yeah, I mean, I was just reminded, I was in college in Bombay in the early 80s, and that was the sort of a time when film societies and film clubs were, all over the place, and we were sometimes like going from one theater to another, watching, Zanussi in the afternoon and, somebody else in the evening. It was like that. And as college students, we were expected to go to VT to pick up the scans and deposit them back. And it was so much. And I mean, it was just so, it was just so, it's such an exciting time because, and I think PK Nair was a name that we knew of even when we were in college and just interested in cinema. So it was interesting to, see the film and sort of be reminded of those days. That's all. And hearing you, really sort of brought that memory back. It played such an important role to have the presence of cinema in our lives as young people. So that's what I was reminded of. Thank you. Thank you for the film. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else would like to come in now? Please unmute yourself so I know that you want to speak. Rajan, Samvartha, anyone? Tarakeshwar? Yeah, Samvartha, please go ahead.
Hello, Shivendra sir. Hi, Irene ma'am. So, I mean, just to respond to what Shivendra sir was just saying, I mean, my first interaction with PK Nair sir was 10 years ago, I mean, 2012. That's when the Kannada writer Rahmat Tarikere was writing the biography of Amir Bhai Karnataki, and he had written to NFAI saying he wants to access a couple of films in which Amir Bhai Karnataki had worked, and he had not got permission. But he came to Pune to actually kind of access the library. And at that point of time, PK Nair was heading this PK Nair committee, which was revising the syllabus and all of that. So we took an appointment with Nair Saab and we went to him, and Nair Saab just sat over there and just said, okay, ha, wo film, this film, that film, yeah, this song. And he started humming those songs. And it was actually kind of, I mean, what Shivendra sir was just trying to say. I mean, Nair Saab would make access to all these films even without the archive being there, actually. While the archive with everything with them would not even make, I mean, what does it take to make a film accessible to a scholar who's writing about something? I mean, that was not done. It came across in a much bigger way for me when in 2018, I mean, I wrote to NFAI saying I want to do a monograph of G. Arvindan. They give their monograph fellowship. And finally, I was allowed to watch the films once, and that too on their computer, small computer screen, not even making good, I mean, available facility for me watching. And when I requested, I can't write a monograph after watching the films only once. We need to watch it twice. The second viewing was not permitted. This is where NFI and, I mean, its accessibility kind of remains. But in comparison to that, I mean, just to imagine, okay, I mean, films being made accessible, available in a place like Hegodu. I mean, it's unbelievable. And all of these, I mean, for me personally, this film is I mean, it's very, I mean, I don't know, I mean, it moved me so much for I don't know what reason. I mean, I can't, and I don't even want to get into, okay, why this film moved me so much. And for us, I mean, in 2013, 100 years of Indian cinema, that week was celebrated with this film. Watching this film at NFAI with Nair Saab was our way of celebrating 100 years of Indian cinema. It moved me so much that actually, I mean, I stole the poster from the NFI notice board, and I still have it with me. But what was moving for me, I mean, while watching this film, at one point, Kasarolli sir actually mentions, I mean, the copy of Gata Shraddha was not there with him, and it was Nair Saab who found it somewhere. And around 7 years before I watched this film, my master's thesis was on Ghatashraddha, and I realized, I mean, if I did my thesis, it was not because of Kasamalli alone; it's also because of Nair Saab. And it was that moment when I realized, I mean, many of these films that I was sitting and watching every evening at either at MT or at NFAI was all thanks to Nair Saab. Or else, I mean, where would have, I mean, I watched Arvindan, where would I have watched John Abraham, where would I have watched, I don't know. And probably, I mean, none of this would have been saved also. So my respect for my affection, every time I felt grateful to Nair Saab. And I also felt grateful to all you people who made this film, because you made, I mean, you actually showed what this man really means. So I think, I mean, at some point, Irene ma'am only had written on Facebook saying that Nair Saab deserves Dada Phalke Award. And like, yes, that man was, I mean, why not? So yeah, I mean, I'm just thankful to you people for making this film, and I'm also, I mean, eternally grateful to Nair Saab, not just for archiving films, but also kind of building a film culture, not just by preserving films, making it accessible, but also writing. And also thanks to, I mean, Film Foundation, I mean, your group, which also published the writings of Nair Saab, Yesterday's Films for Tomorrow. I mean, all these things matter a lot for me as a film student, as a film buff. So thanks. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Samvarta. Yeah.
Just a
Yes,
quick
yes.
word, Samvrata, about the poster that you stole. I remember when Nair Saab died, when his daughter was speaking to the news channels in Malayalam, Asianet and other channels that was shown. That poster was there behind her when she was speaking. So it was an integral part of their home too.
Okay, it's an integral part of my home too now.
It's a wonderful poster, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Tarakeshwar, please go ahead.
Thank you for the film, and it was wonderful. But as Nikhila pointed out, the impact of this archive on constructing the history of cinema in India itself is something that was, I thought, missing within the film. In the sense that if people like Rama Tadikere worked and Amir Bhai Karnataki using this, and then there are several other scholars who have used this archive, which has changed the way we look at the history of Indian cinema itself. So in that sense, apart from how this archive helped the film fraternity in owning their skills in their formative years, and then trying to get back certain things at a later stage, how the scholars have also benefited from this archive. If that part was also there in the film, it would have been great. But somebody else can also do that. How different scholars have tapped the resources in the archive, and how it changed the way we understood cinema itself. Apart from that, it was great, and I completely enjoyed the thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tarakeshwar. Yeah, would you like to respond, Shivendra?
No, it's just
Okay.
that unfortunately I have to leave because I've spent. Unfortunately, I have to, because I've got some other work pending on that. I would love to continue, but it's just that I have a few assignments and I've been here, so I would really request you to kindly leave me. And then anything else, I would be happy to answer one more question or any of those things.
Yeah, if anyone has anything quickly to ask Shivendra before he leaves, you're most welcome. Otherwise, on behalf of TFO, thank you very much, Shivendra, first of all, for making available this film.
No.
And also for joining the discussion today. It's a late hour discussion. All our Saturday discussions are, happen at this hour. So thanks for joining us and very patiently, responding to all the
thank you. Sorry,
questions.
I would have been happy to be here longer. It's just that I'm already out somewhere, so it's just that
That's fine. That's fine.
And-
That's
and
okay.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, and we'll.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Yeah, so others can, if anyone has any comment to make about the film, two panelists are here, and we can continue this discussion if anyone else has anything to say at this point. Yes, please go
It's
ahead.
been a
Yeah,
long
yeah.
session. I think
Yeah.
maybe we should wind up, right?
No, ma'am, if you have anything to say, most welcome. One of the things I wanted to ask was, you say that you have returned the award. So I was wondering if you would want to talk about that at all?
I think it was just a group of us, I think filmmakers who felt the need to make a statement. So we'd come together and thought this was a way of expressing our unhappiness with the way things were panning out. I don't really know if it made any difference, but yeah, we wanted to make a statement.
Okay. Anything else, ma'am, that you would like to share about the process of making or editing Celluloid Man? Would you like to speak about that a little?
It was an amazing journey actually, and because of the kind of, it was like discovering about Indian cinema heritage, I think, as we went along, because each interview would lead to information being thrown out, and then we would read up about that, look for films. So it was, and then it's like Kumar Sahani, I think, says that each film is a record of a time, of a thought, and somewhere I think Celluloid Man also does that. I mean, the moment, it's 10 years old now, and what we talked about in that film, like a lot of things have, and it's almost like a record of history in itself, because so much has changed since then. I mean, cinema itself has changed, apart from the fact that a lot of people are not there anymore, but cinema itself has changed so much. So it's an important record of what was happening, what is happening, and that's what makes the film very special for me. And I mean, I had great fun editing it because of the kind of footage I went through. I think that shows in the film also. Yeah, but the rest, I mean, the film is there. I don't really have much to say.
Any other points that anyone wants to make, or if Satish wants to come in again to respond or talk about something?
No, just one point I wanted to ask Irene, since we are not technically very aware of the process of filmmaking, but I read that this film was shot in 16mm and different formats. And then it was remade in 35mm format. Can you tell us something about the process? It was shot in different periods using different kinds of cameras. Was that a problem? Did you edit it digitally, or did you edit it in the old way?
No, it's for the editor, it doesn't make any difference, because then the footage is all converted, and editing is now like on a computer, right? So we get the footage digitized. So for us at the editing stage, it doesn't make any difference. Yeah, it was shot on various formats, but it didn't make a difference at the editing stage. It's only after editing that when it goes out for the DI and all that, then it makes a difference, but not for the editor.
And also this thing which I had spoken about, the soundtrack from on the film reels. So talk about how Megedakathara was very important for everybody, but also for you and in your family, your father in particular. So can you just remember maybe that period while you were editing was it Shivendra who said, I want it done like this, and you just edited it like that? Or were you also thinking of
No, that
something from
was,
your
I
own?
mean, the great part about editing Celluloid Man is I was kind of left to do my own thing. So I had a lot of creative freedom, and the use of the soundtracks was my decision. Even like in the beginning, when a lot of there are various film soundtracks. I mean, like so one fades in, another fades out, and so that was a design that I had worked out, and it worked well. So Shivi liked it too. And Megida Katara, yeah, I mean that's a film that's very close to me, and that scene especially. So when we were talking about Ghatak, that scene is something I wanted to use for the film, and that Dada Ami Bajte Chai and the film reels rotting away kind of just it worked very well for me, and I think it worked well for a lot of people who watched it, because people have told me that was a very moving scene.
Yeah. Anyone else? Was Rajan trying to unmute himself? I'm not sure. Okay, Ajanta. Okay. So if no one has any other response, let me thank, first of all, Satish. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this, and also for your really wonderful way of opening out the discussion with the 4 points. Irene Malik, thank you for joining us. Samartha said, I could contact you, and thank you very much for agreeing to be on this panel. Shivendra Singh Dungarpur was with us. So thanks to him for joining the discussion. Thanks everyone for joining the discussion today. Sure, you all found the film enjoyable, and I hope you found the discussion itself, equally entrancing. Thank you all very much. We will meet again next Saturday at the same time at 9 p.m. All are most welcome. It will be on the same Zoom platform. Thank you all once again, and have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much.